Okay, thank you for listening to Ingram Law. As always, we appreciate you being a guest. My website is joeingramlaw.com. My phone number is 205-335-2640. This is Real Law Alabama, where we discuss criminal and family law topics in Alabama. Sometimes we have a conversation related to community affairs. Sometimes I bring in guests that have unique perspectives that I think that my subscribers and the audience will enjoy. And tonight we have a very unique and wonderful guest with us. Um, just to briefly bring you up to speed, I met this gentleman uh, 2007, 2008. Um, he was at a major company in the United States that managed websites. He was at findlaw.com. And I don't know how I came to meet him or cross his path, but he started a company called Omnipresent SEO, and he took over my website. And we had a good business relationship, and I hope friendship over about 5 years. And over the years, we've crossed paths by LinkedIn. And last week, I rediscovered him, and I thought, man, I want to talk to this guy so bad and catch up with him. And so I know that my audience is going to love this, other than the sound of my southern accent. Um, Eric is going to provide you some excellent, excellent information tonight. And so, without any further ado, I give you Mr. Eric Bersano. Eric.
Well, Joe, thank you for that tremendous introduction. I hope I can live up to it. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much, Eric. We have, um, over the years, checked in with each other by LinkedIn. I don't stay on LinkedIn. I hate it. I got
Right.
back on. I got back on about a week ago, and I don't know what made me look you up, but I did. And I thought, man, I want to have a conversation with him. And you were so kind to give me your time. People don't know you're out in California, so
Yeah.
so introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them a little bit about your background, your work history, what you do, your knowledge, because I know they don't know.
Sure. So I'll keep it somewhat brief. So right before I was at that company you mentioned, FindLaw, I was actually working in the medical device world, and I found out that I was never going to have as much knowledge as anybody that I was talking to, because everybody that I was talking to had gone to 10 years extra school and had a bunch of initials after their name, and I just always felt like I wasn't adding value to the conversation. And a friend of mine was working at FindLaw and said, "Hey, I've met this great company and we're doing all these great things, and I love my job and what I do." So I switched over and quickly found out that with legal, if you're helping someone to grow their practice, if they've got more clients on a monthly basis because they met you, they're pretty happy to talk to you. And I did have a lot more, job satisfaction. Was creating stronger relationships because of that. And since Fine Law went on and had started my own company, and then had moved over to do some things on the TV side that worked with law firms, and got into some really specific practice areas like mass torts, which is interesting, and really just try to continue to grow my knowledge from, when I started, it was kind of the end of the yellow pages and the beginning of the internet. And since then, Joe, back in 2007 when you and I met, there wasn't even Twitter yet. I
Nope.
don't think the phone was out yet. And things have just changed and gotten crazier ever since. So my job is trying to keep up with all those changes and see how I can use those changes to help my clients get more clients.
So there's so much I want to talk to you about tonight. Um, let's talk about um, I consider 2003 to 2007, 10, 12 what I call the wild wild west of the internet and legal websites. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's just so many changes that were going on, and people were getting pulled in what 100 different directions then.
Yeah. And everybody was promising SEO, search engine optimization. Everybody was promising that.
Yeah, and the thing with SEO is it's really an all or nothing game. And what I would do is I would talk to law firms all the time, and I'd say, "Hey, I think I can help you out. When I do Google searches for your practice area in your city, I can't find you anywhere. You're on page 9." And they'd say, "Ah, well, I never get anything from the internet." And I'd say, "Yeah, because you're on page 9 for everything that I search for." And what you find out is to the victor go all the spoils. You can't do online marketing halfway and expect half of the effort. You can't put 10% in and get 10% out. You either compete with everybody who's ranking for the keywords that you want, or you get nothing. I tell people all the time, you can rank at the very top of page 2 for every single keyword that you want, and you'll get nothing because no one goes past the first 5 or 6 on the top of Google. And even since then, even since 2012, you've now got LSAs, which are local service ads, which show up above the pay per click, which is Google AdWords. And then you have Google Maps, which is its own algorithm, meaning when I type in, say, family law attorney Birmingham, typically the map listing, the organic maps, is going to show up above even the organic. And not only that, but Joe, if you and I are a mile apart in Birmingham and we both search that keyword on our phones, we're probably going to get different results. You're going to get people based on the algorithm who are closer to you, and I'm going to get people who are closer to me. But we probably will have the same results underneath the maps. So you're dealing with two different algorithms that are constantly running, taking different things into account. So to go back to your, original point of everybody promising SEO and very, very few people being able to deliver, what you're dealing with is a very few select spots. Let's call it 5 spots between the maps and organic, to which everybody's going to get the activity, and people underneath are going to feel like they're getting nothing.
Yeah. And just for the record, uh, I think we can agree Google runs the world.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement, Eric, or am I being wrong
Yeah.
tonight?
And they act like it. Anybody who's listening who's ever tried to call Google for support for anything knows that, customer service is not their top priority.
No, they don't have to answer to anybody. They don't take anybody's calls. I don't think.
Yeah.
So,
That's what happens when you're a $1 trillion company. You kind of let customer service go by the wayside and act like a king.
okay, so after omnipresent, I remember Eric. I know you don't know this about me. I have an excellent memory. I remember the day you called me to inform me that you were bailing out, that you had taken a new position. Where did you go after omnipresent?
Yeah, so we started and ran Omnipresent with a partner for 4 years, and then, decided to go in a different direction. I really was looking at what else there was in legal marketing. And at that point, I joined a company called CAMG that was 100% focused on TV marketing for law firms, but specifically for mass torts. Now, anybody who's seen a commercial for Camp Lejeune or Xarelto or Roundup, and have you used it and do you have this injury? Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And the thing that was interesting about that is you were dealing with really large campaigns. We would have law firms come to us, and it would not be out of the ordinary for them to want to spend $1 million over a few months. And what was happening is this was kind of spooling up because people weren't used to advertising on TV, back in those days for these types of cases. But the CAMG model was literally taken from the page books of the late night infomercials, like the Snuggie or the Sham Wow. Literally, the guy who started CAMG worked with the guy, who invented the Sham Wow 5 or 6 years earlier. So it was really taking this model of not really showing a commercial for branding or to get a jingle across, but it was to get an action, a direct response, is which that type of TV is called direct response. So you run an ad, call now, phone number is up the whole time, call now. And it worked really, really well. And it was an eye-opening experience to me to kind of see how the TV world was able to be overlapped onto this legal marketing. And after a stint there for almost 3 years, I ended up getting back into digital because there's more and more people going to the digital world than there are to the TV. And even TV, which some may already know, is really becoming more and more streaming. So I think it was about a year ago, we hit the tipping point where more than 50% of the people out there watch their TV through streaming, whether that's through Hulu or YouTube TV or Slingbox or some type of streaming service, not cable and broadcast. And that number is not going back the other way. So we may be at 52% now streaming. Next year, it's going to be at 58 and then 60. And then pretty soon it's going to be 100%. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall and said, well, I need to hop back onto the digital side. But I was really glad that I got that experience over there because it introduced me to a whole different type of marketing and a whole different type of practice area.
So, so what are you doing and focused on now?
So now I'm kind of combining all of those uh experiences and really putting together custom tailored marketing programs for law firms. So a really large client of mine, up in Orange County, have, been around for 40 years and cover all of Southern California. We're doing a little bit of everything, you know, building out the website, writing content and blogs for them, doing search engine optimization, paid search, doing social media for them, and getting ready to launch a streaming advertising campaign for there where we actually went and shot videos with them and their partners. And those are going to be aired all around Orange County where their target audience is. So not cable and broadcast, but on TV where we can hyper target, by zip code on where we know that their clients are. And then on the opposite spectrum of that, it could be, a small estate planning attorney, in the middle of Oklahoma, and just really doing some maintenance for them and making sure that their content is up to date, making sure that their website is properly optimized so that they can pull in, the specific number of clients they need a month to keep their business growing. So it's really a chance for me to use everything that I've learned and then custom tailor a strategy for a law firm.
Um, let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with a company in Atlanta called crisp.com?
Of course.
Okay.
Started out as Crisp Video
Yep.
and did excellent video work. And then now I think more Crisp Consulting, where they have consulting and they're helping law firms to grow. But yes, very familiar.
They they tried to get me to come to Atlanta, and their big thing, they work with some major firms. I don't know about out in California, Eric. Are you familiar with Morgan and Morgan?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're
National
everywhere.
now.
Yeah. Morgan and Morgan works with them, and then there's a guy here in Birmingham that went to law school. He was about 2 or 3 years ahead of me. Do you know who Alex Shinara
Yep.
is?
Big TV advertiser out of Birmingham.
Yep, yep. He was the billboard guy of Alabama.
Yeah.
So Crisp tried to hook me in, and they wanted to shoot a video to put on the top of my website, and then they told me what they come to charge to do this. Um, Not sure that I was really sold on it 2 years ago. I think I am more open to it now, um, because they showed me some numbers, and um, I think it helps humanize you a little bit to the average consumer. Um, and that's one reason why I do this. This podcast is educational. People listen to this um, because we give them free legal content that they have questions about. And so I may do that. I'm really considering doing that. What are your thoughts about putting the video on a website?
Yeah, I like video, and it's not just video on the website. The great thing about video is you shoot one really good video and it becomes omnipresent. The first company that I had started was the reason we called it omnipresent is you could be everywhere at the same time, on the internet. So you do this one great video and that goes on your website, but it also goes on your social media. It goes on your YouTube channel. It's something that you could send to a potential client. You might shoot an overview, but you also might shoot a 60-second spot on family law, and how the process works, or criminal defense and what your expectations are. And you're exactly right. It helps to humanize you. So I always tell people, most people have never hired an attorney in their life. And it can be an intimidating process, because most of the time you're calling up an attorney, it's because you're in trouble.
Yep.
You're either hurt, you need a personal injury attorney, or you got arrested, or you're having difficulties with your marriage. That's already stressful. Now, add on top of that what people think about attorneys. And I don't mean in a negative way, but they think they're expensive, highly educated, could be an intimidating process. Well, what if I watch a 90-second video of Joe Ingram talking about who he is and what he likes to do and why he's so passionate about helping his clients out? Well, I'm more apt to call Joe. And people are just conditioned to watch videos now. I mean, TikTok is video only. Instagram is switching over. They're trying to push more video. So yes, it does have images and photos, but they have their reels section that's video only. Same with Facebook. So you are missing out on an opportunity, and you can still, I wouldn't say you'd be an early adopter if you put video up now, but you'll definitely be at the front part of the attorneys that do it. 3 or 4 years from now, every single attorney is going to have some sort of video on their website. So knowing that, you might as well do it sooner than later.
Yeah. Um, from a objective expert opinion, um, and I haven't asked you this, and I want you to tell me the truth. So, what do you think about me doing this podcast that I've been doing for about 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I think podcasts, writing blogs, posting to LinkedIn, they have to, I think you have to give and give and give before you can ever expect to get. And I think if you're giving good information, you've got an informational podcast and people think it's a good resource and they share it with people, your audience will naturally grow. Um, I was listening to a podcast the other day and it talked about Joe Rogan, who I think is the most popular podcaster in the world, said he did it for 5 years before he made a single dime. He didn't do it to make money. He did it because it was fun. He did it because, he liked the technology. He thought it was cool and cutting edge. So if you go to LinkedIn, you go, I'm going to post to LinkedIn every day and it's going to really drive clients, and you get 9 days in and you don't have any activity, well, that it's never going to work. The people who I've talked to who are successful, whether it's with a podcast or posting on social media, they did it because they were somewhat attracted. It excited them. They were excited to do the podcast. They were excited to go and build a social media audience, but they didn't have instant success. So I think the idea of the podcast is good. I looked at your link before, and you've got a bunch of these that you're putting out, and the topics seem very interesting. And let's face it, criminal defense can be very interesting. I mean, what are some of the most popular series and movies right now? True crimes. And who has more information about true crimes than a criminal defense attorney? So there's so many cool topics that you can cover. And if you're excited about it, I would say it will pay off if it hasn't already.
Yeah. I I didn't do this for money. I didn't do this um, for anything other than to educate the average consumer that may call me about a criminal case. Um, because there's so much information out there, and there's so many lawyers. Eric, you know this. I don't have to tell you. In the Birmingham market, there's 15,000 lawyers. So who do you go hire? And that's why we talk about why you should have a preliminary hearing. How do you pick a criminal lawyer? Questions you should ask a criminal lawyer before you hire them. How many cases have you tried? The two um, highest ranked podcasts still on my channel is one that I did with a client that was interviewed by the FBI that was going to be charged, that I got dismissed, by the way. And then the other one that people are still fascinated by, even though there was nothing really educational that we talked about, was one of my private investigators. People, for some reason, are fascinated to hear me talk to my private investigator.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I think people are fascinated with the criminal defense process in general. That some of the most compelling news is about criminal cases. I mean, OJ just passed away. That was a case that compelled the entire nation to watch TV incessantly, courtroom. And uh, then there would be people who would talk for hours about what happened in the courtroom after they watched. It's just something, I don't know what it is in human nature, but it is compelling. And then you having a more inside look where you can offer your own insights and how things work, how the sausage is being made or what to expect, and all of these things that people kind of wonder about, you can add clarity to. So the fact that you enjoy talking to people and sharing your knowledge of this field, I think is great and something that will attract more and more listeners as you keep doing it.
yeah. Um, so, after 12 years, is there anything that you regret? Or do you think that every decision, um, professional decision you made has been a good step for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I could say. I could definitely say I've made some bad decisions, but I like where I am now. So if I would say I regretted those decisions, where'd I be where I am now? So I think if you make a bad decision and you don't learn from it, that's probably something that you would regret. But for the most part, um, yeah, it's hard to say that I would. I'm trying to think of some because I don't want to dodge the question. I'm trying to think of something where that was a bad decision that, yeah, I would say, you know, starting that company. at the time that I did was really good timing, you know. So that omnipresent, I think uh we launched in 2009. And I, ran it for 4 years with a partner, and we just had disagreements in which direction we wanted the company to go. So I was like, well, I'm gonna step away. And I really liked owning a company and making the decisions and watching it grow, and being responsible for every dollar that came into that. I mean, you run your own firm, you know what that's like. And then I went back to quote unquote working for the man. And there's some security in that, but if I ever think back to what if I was still running that company today, all these years later, what could it have turned into? So that's one thing that I would say I do think back on every once in a while, is when that fork in the road came up, what if I zigged instead of zagged at that point?
Um, I wasn't trying to to play gotcha there. I was just curious.
Oh, it's a good
About
question. I
uh,
mean, it's a really good question.
I think about I think about my own career, the last 22 years. Um, have I made some mistakes? Hell yeah. Have I learned some lessons? Absolutely. Um, but talking to you brings back conversations we had when we worked together. You have the best demeanor uh, about you and how you're able to talk to people. I talked to a lot of people about a website back in the day, and I knew when I talked to you, um, there was just something special about how you delivered the information, and I knew that you had left Fine Law, and you were a young guy, a new company, and I said, I'm going to take a chance on him, and you took a chance on me too, and we had a great working relationship. We really did.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed you always took my calls. You were always available, which is, um, hard in this world. Um, so it says a lot about you and your character and your integrity as a business owner and a professional. So you are a true professional.
Well, I really appreciate that. Honestly, is a, a great compliment. I appreciate every word of that. And from my perspective, if someone pays me $1 and I don't make them at least three, that I feel personally responsible for that. I'm not selling somebody a car that's going to give them a great exhilaration when they step on the gas pedal. They come to me, whether we have a great relationship or they're just feel like we're the right fit, because they want more clients. They want, to spend X amount of dollars and get 3X or more in return. And I don't take that responsibility lightly. I feel that I have to be a champion for the people that I work with, because they're trusting me at the end of the day. Yes, I'm working for a company. I'm telling them that our services are better, but at the end of the day, it's Joe looking, if we're on a Zoom call, looking eye to eye or talking, and you saying, all right, Eric, I believe what you told me. I believe that you can get me what you said you could do. And then I need to go out and do it. So I appreciate you saying that. And I do take it to heart. And I do look at every client who trusts me with the ability to get them more clients as a personal responsibility for me.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get to the lightning round, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, people, what time of day is it, Eric, out there?
It is 5:30. So
God bless
earlier than you. Yeah.
you. Okay. Well, I have to work to midnight, Eric.
Oh, wow.
I'm working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow. Man, I hope you have good vacations.
Um, last year I don't even think I got to take 4 weeks off. Business is so strong. Um, I hope to hire a young, promising lawyer next year. But it's hard, Eric, without getting too down in the weeds. This generation of law student, they don't have the drive. They don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um, I have trouble with my law clerks for the summer. They don't have the get up and go that I did 25 years ago. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you one thing, and then I'll shut up. This group of kids were all born after 2001. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if you think back to 2001, 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
from a national perspective, our response was we want to make everybody whole. We don't want anybody to feel any pain. We want everybody to get a trophy. We want everybody to be recognized. We're all winners, and there's no competition anymore. And the thing about what I do, Eric, especially in the Birmingham market in Alabama where I compete, if you are not working the way I work, you are going to get beat by your competition every day of the week. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything that you said, and I've listened to, some books on this. I don't read a lot, but I love to listen to audiobooks because I feel I can somewhat multitask. And if one of the best examples that I heard was, the moth or the caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. If you help that moth come out of its cocoon, it won't survive. It needs the resistance of the cocoon as it's going to into its new state. It needs that to build up its strength to become an actual moth that can fend for itself. And when you make life too easy on people, if people don't have challenges that they can either overcome or fail and understand, it's better to fail in kindergarten. It's better to fail in first grade. It's better to fail in high school and know what that's like and how to be resilient than it is to fail for the first time when you're 25 and you've got a job and you're no longer working with your parents because now you don't have the tools. You haven't burst through that cocoon and built up the muscle mass, psychologically speaking, even physically speaking, to be able to handle it. And I agree. I see some of it. In my personal life, I'm attracted to people who aren't like that. Like it's a good thing that my father had taught me is like, hang around people that you want to be like, hang around people that you think are better than you, that you can learn something from. And I do think some of this younger generation is kind of like what can you do for me? As opposed to how can I be an asset to Joe so I can learn as much as possible from him because he's been there and he's done it, as opposed to I think today will be a 5.5 hour day for me and I'll call it quits.
um, I'm going to say this only because of what you just said. I had a very good, very qualified law student email me yesterday about a clerkship. Now I'm going to have three this summer, Eric.
Hmm.
I'm going to have three law clerks this summer. And the young gentleman in the email said, "Mr. Ingram, I really want to clerk for you. Is this a paying position, and how much are you going to pay me?" He literally put that in the email. Can you believe
Yeah,
that?
I do believe it nowadays. Yeah. No, I I think the people don't understand that your payment is that experience. That's the payment, is being, a student who gets to operate inside of a real law firm that's doing real cases and, have somebody with your kind of experience look over their shoulder and guide them and mentor them. So, I don't know when and you yeah, right after 2001, whatever that new generation, mentality is, it's not that. I remember that it used to be when I was younger, I looked up at adults as adults and they were, different. They were adults. I couldn't even have conversations with them. And now I feel like there's 10-year-old kids that are, hey, what's up, pops, to people in their 40s. So something changed over the last couple decades, which makes me an older guy now.
Okay. So one last question. We'll get to the lightning round. I value your time. Thank you so much. we got to talk about this. I'm going to bring up a conversation. You may remember this.
Okay.
Back in the heyday, we used to talk college football. Alabama had Nick Saban, which is the greatest.
Hmm.
We talked about where you're from, Kansas State.
Yeah.
Do you remember those
Good.
phone? Do you remember those conversations?
I don't know that I do because Kansas State hasn't had a great football team probably since you and I chatted, but
Well,
remind me of it.
I used to pick at you because of y'all's head coach. What was his name? Dan Snyder? Is that his name?
Schneider, Bill
Yeah,
Schneider.
yeah. Kind of grumpy old guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
He finally give it up and give it to his son, or am I wrong on that?
So here's the thing on Bill Schneider. Bill Schneider retired and then they named the stadium after him. And then he came back and became the only coach to coach a game in a stadium named after him. So I don't know if that was his move, which I don't think it was. What happened was he was such a good coach and great recruiter. So here's Bill Schneider's thing, and you may probably all know this because you know way more about college football than I do. But Bill Schneider's great talent was he would go out and he would find junior college talent, which really put you on the clock because he would go out and find world-class talent that was going to junior college that no one else was looking at. He'd bring him in, but then he only had him for a couple years. So he would find these guys because think about it. How are you going to get somebody to go to Manhattan, Kansas, literally in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of cornfields? Closest interstate was 30 minutes away. How are you going to convince someone to come to Kansas State when you don't really have a football legacy, you know? And what he would do is take these guys that got looked over, but were doing well and bring them in. And he built, when I was there, in the early 90s, they were a top 25 team every year. And they were one play away from going to a national championship, which people probably don't know. It was an overtime play. They lost. But that was his real talent. So Bill Schneider, amazing coach. And yes, did finally pass the baton. And he's probably in his late 80s now.
That's okay. People, I mean, there's some really sharp people in their 80s. There really are.
Yeah.
But I used to pick at you. We talked that one year that they were really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching Kansas State on TV. And I kept asking you, Eric, every one of these guys are like 6'4" to 6'6". Why are they all so tall? They look like basketball players. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specific conversation, but that could be a recruiting technique of Bill's.
Well, it just seems like everybody that played at Kansas State for a period of time were like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". I don't know why. I just remember that. And I used to kid you about that. But anyway,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
digress. I'm an
Well,
old
Joe,
man here.
let me ask you one question. So, it's been such a long time that you and I have talked, and sounds like you're working yourself to the bone. What have you done to become so successful? What's your secret?
I don't think I have a secret. I just I love what I do. I really mean that. I'm very passionate about what I do. If I didn't, then I wouldn't do what I do, right?
Right.
I have about 80 clients that I manage at any given day. That's about my limit as a solo practitioner, is 80 clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I give them um, the best service that I can to be their lawyer. And when somebody pays me um, to two things, the two biggest things I do, Eric, and I share this with people all the time. If I try a child custody case, um, that determination is going to be how that child is raised for the next 10 to 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
That is a serious decision that somebody has put in my hands to get them custody of their child. That's an ultimate responsibility that I have.
Yeah.
The second biggest decision that I make every day um, is when I do serious criminal work where people are facing real prison time in a state or federal penitentiary and their liberties at interest. And I know, I know that I am a better lawyer today than I was even 10 years ago. Uh, do I go the extra mile? Absolutely. Um, we do better discovery, we do better research, we do better investigation. Uh, we leave no stone unturned before my client decides to take a plea or we go to trial and we put his life in the hands of a jury. And I've just been, it's finally started to pay off here the last 5 years. I have made, um, not bragging, I've made more money in 4 months than I made all of last year, this
Good.
year.
Well, it sounds like it's a good fit. I mean, the clients that hire you are getting the best their money can buy, and you're working for it. Because if you're working till midnight and 18 hours a day, that money is well earned.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy it. Okay. So let's get to the fun part of the show. I always enjoy these questions because you have no clue what I'm about to ask you.
Right?
Um, tell me the most famous dead person that you would either A, like to have a conversation with or have dinner with, and why?
Well, I'll say that so off the top of my head, I would say Walter Payton. And he was a childhood hero of mine. You know, my dad was military, but my mom and dad were both from Illinois, so we always followed the Cubs and the Bears. And I was in my formative years when the Bears went to the Super Bowl, and I used to just love watching Walter Payton. I saw documentary on him, and how hard of a worker he was. And it was just, one of those guys. And he left this earth way too early. I don't know if you know the story, but he was on I think a donor list to be a liver transplant receiver, and didn't call his number in time. But he's a guy I'd love to just sit down and talk to and hear stories about him and his football days, and you know ping him about his work ethic, because everybody on that team, when they talked about him, they just said, yeah, he just outworked everybody.
Okay. Um, I don't know this about you. Are you married, Eric?
I am. I'm married for almost 8 years now and have a 3-month old who's I can hear in the other room. Hopefully, none of the audience members can hear her, but yeah,
You're a dad.
I'm a new dad as of 3 months and 1 week ago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, let me ask you this. I don't know how old you are. Um, I'm not going to ask. How do you want to be remembered at the end of your life?
I I would just want to be remembered as someone who made the party better. If you walk into a room and people go, "I'm glad he's here because we're going to have more fun because he's in the room," that'd be all right by me. Friends, family, unknown people who never met me before, that would be good enough for me.
Okay. Um, now that you're a dad, you told me that. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, if I have my way, I'll be on a driving range with my daughter, getting her trained up to be on the LPGA so she can finance our travel. And now I I don't know. I would like to be. I'm 50, so on the older side for new parent. But no, I see myself. I do want to have some family time. I'm in San Diego. I don't see myself moving from here, but maybe enjoying a little bit more travel time with my wife and introducing my daughter to lots of fun things that California has to offer, as well as travel outside the city and state and even country.
Okay. What is a unique thing about you that nobody knows?
Um, I wouldn't. So that's so that nobody knows. Oh, I um, I survived a plane crash, and I'll say it with that pause because the plane hadn't taken off yet. But I was in a small prop plane in Utica, New York, when we hit a deer while we were taxiing. And I don't mean 5 or 10 miles an hour. We had to be seconds from liftoff, and we hit a deer. My guess was probably close to 80 miles an hour, and it was a fixed wing where the wing goes over the top of the plane, and it had fixed landing gear with covers on them. And the deer hit the wheel cover, and the wheel cover flew up into the side of the plane, and we thought the engine blew up. And because it broke a couple of windows, all you could hear was the sound of the prop, and everybody's like looking at each other like, oh my god, what just happened? But it's so loud you can't hear what the pilot's saying, you can't hear what anybody's saying. And when we got turned around and back to the airport, we came out and we saw what you can imagine on the side of the plane, and went back inside and had to find other arrangement to get to JFK that night.
my One of my nephews went in the Air Force Academy, and good kid. Went through the Air Force Academy, did 10 or 12 years in the Air Force. Now he is a pilot for Delta,
Hmm.
and it is so hard, Eric, to look at this little boy as a child, and now I kid him, and I'll say, Ryan, aren't you scared flying that plane? And he just looks at me like, Joe, you're an old man. No, I do this every day. But that would scare the hell out of me driving an airplane for people. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he does it. So
Yeah.
it's a really cool job. It's a really cool job.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Talk about a job with some great perks.
They go all over the world and they get to fly for free.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, um, I know this was probably an imposition to you, um,
Not at
but
all.
but it was so great for me to catch up with you, and I'm going to catch up with you offline about some things, and I really enjoyed this, Eric. You are such a fine man. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate the invite. It was great to catch up with you, and I'm really happy to hear about all your success.
All right. All right, folks. That was Eric Bersano. And as we always say, take care of yourself and each other and have a good night.
No representation is made that the quality of the legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.